do these things sound to you? Financial stability, better health, greater happiness, and healthier kids. What does marriage have to do with this? Stay tuned and hear about it on Weekend Connection. My name is Mike Dyes. Now, let's get connected. At the heart of a healthy nation is the state of its families, and healthy families are directly linked to healthy marriages. Today we consider the state of marriage in the U.S., including in the church, as we talk with Arlene Pellicane, the marriage and family parenting author and speaker, joining us today. Welcome, Arlene.
Thanks so much for having me.
What difference does it make in our country as a whole when our marriages are strong?
It makes a big difference because as strong as a nation can be, you can take that to each individual family unit. And when you have a family unit where marriage is prioritized, where it's nurtured, where it's cared for, you can imagine that children who grow up in that kind of environment, they're less likely to live in poverty, they're less likely to have mental health issues, they're less likely to be depressed or anxious. They are less likely to do drugs or be suicidal. And so if you have a society where, well, the people in our society, they're healthy, they're well, they're loved, that's going to make a tremendous difference.
So, having a healthy marriage means we treat each other better, and we're not taking out our frustrations on our family members and things like that. So it ends up making a very practical difference across the country.
It does. It's very easy, right, to be nice to a stranger for a few seconds. But then when you are with your spouse all the time, every day,
Mm.
especially if you are working together in the home or maybe through COVID, you remember that you were together a lot. That's when you really get to practice being like Christ to say, I'm going to be patient. I'm going to be loving. I often think of that in Proverbs 31, that the law of kindness is on her lips, and I think, wow, is what I just said, was that governed by the law of kindness? So
Mm.
marriage really is a wonderful place to mature as a believer and to be able to treat others as you would like to be treated.
Mm. That's a good point. Let's get more specific on the state of marriage in America. What can you tell us about how things are going right now, good or
Yeah.
bad?
Yeah, there are some very interesting points. In National Marriage Week, one of the things that the researchers were trying to find was how does a date night impact a marriage? And what they found was that 52% of the respondents said that they really never dated during the year. So either never at all or maybe just a few times per year. So 52%. That's a pretty high percentage of married people. And 48% said, yes, we do date usually once or twice a month or more regularly. And they found that those who were dating more regularly, perhaps unsurprising, that they had a boost in many areas of their marriages, usually a 15% boost, which is a pretty high boost in terms of studies. So they were less likely to get divorced. They were more happy. They were more happy with their communication skills. They were more sexually satisfied. All these different markers. They were more committed to one another. And that came from the date night. And really what that informed for my husband and I, we've been married for 24 years, is that informed, like, we ought to make time for this. But thankfully, we were about a once a month kind of couple. So we're like, okay, we're still in that 48%,
Mm.
but that this is something to prioritize because when you look at our culture, in the past, people might have been more involved in a service club. They would be in some kind of community where they were regularly serving together, or maybe they were in a bridge club, or maybe they were in a square dancing club, or maybe they attended a church organization, something, a religious organization. But today, many people don't have those things. And in the space that has left, that vacuum, marriage can fill that space very nicely. But with less people valuing marriage and working at their marriages and being married, then they find that they are lonelier than ever. So it is interesting in this cultural moment how marriage, even though it may be portrayed as antiquated, is really a beautiful way to protect yourself from isolation and to be together with someone. And it's something very, very healthy. There's, I think the latest statistics were there's 67 million marriages in the United States. and 750,000 filing for divorce. So, of course, divorce is still a great issue. And if you talk to a teenager today, many of them are suffering from the fallout of their parents' divorce, or maybe they know someone very close to them who is divorced. And so it can be scary, right, for young people to look at marriage and think, well, I don't want to get a divorce. But I think what statistics could encourage us is that the divorce rate is leveling off and it is dropping. And people, perhaps as they do become more selective and careful in their marriages, could have then a better chance at being married. But I think that what young people really need to understand is that marriage is so good for you. You know, like we've talked about that married people statistically, they've done these studies, the National Marriage Project out of the University of Washington, Brad Wilcox and Jeffrey Dew. And what they found is, what boosts happiness? Because today, young people are interested in happiness. That's like the buzzword, like, oh, we just want to do what makes us happy. And obviously that needs to be taken with a grain of salt. We could talk about that in different ways. But when they survey these people, they find that people who are married get a 102% a better chance at happiness. Their odds increase by 102% by being married, and by 219% if they're happily married. So their odds of being happy totally boosted by 219% if they're happily married, compared to a 29% boost if they're a college grad, a 51% boost if they have the higher income than most. So it is even interesting, I think, and helpful to show young people that marriage really does fulfill people, and a happy marriage even more so, and that you would have less chance of living in poverty. You are healthier. It's a better environment to raise kids in as you look to the future. Those are very important points for kids to know.
Well, that's good to know. We hear so much complaining about marriages and oh, my husband this or oh, my wife that.
Right.
It's good to hear the good side that so much happiness comes from marriage.
Yes, very much so. And you get what you're looking for. If you are looking for the negatives of your spouse, you will find them, right? But
Mm.
if you start looking for what's the 10%, let's say I don't like 90%, but what's the 10% I do like about my spouse?
Mm.
And maybe I start journaling about that. Maybe I start speaking gratitude, like, hey, you go to work every day to provide for our family, and I'm really grateful for that. And maybe that's the only thing you perceive your husband is doing right. That's what you concentrate on and you begin to be thankful for. And then all of a sudden, I think our perspective can change so much that all of a sudden we see, it's like the blinders come off and we see, like, wait a minute, this person I'm married to is actually a pretty interesting and good person.
Mm. Well, you mentioned National Marriage Week. We'll get more into that in a little bit. Our guest today is Arlene Pellicane, author and speaker. Her books include 31 Days to Becoming a Happy Mom. I heard someone talking about a young couple living together, and he kind of shrugged it off, describing them as being married. They just don't have a piece of paper. Do we see that a lot of younger couples are hesitant to even to get married? They're more willing to live together when years ago that would have been frowned upon.
Yeah, this is very, very common. So just in the 1960s, only 5% of couples were cohabitating and not being married, but today 70% of couples cohabitate. It's a huge uptick. Personally, I would say, disturbingly so, that even kids in the church, kids raised in church, raised by Christian families, going to Christian school, that many of them don't have that stigma associated with living together before marriage than the generation previous. And so there is this idea of, like, well, marriage it's just a piece of paper. Why don't we just kind of kick the tires, so to speak, and why don't we try it out first to see if we like it? And then if we don't like being together, then that way we'll be able to dissolve and go our separate ways without all this, stuff about marriage. We'll just try it out. And I do believe, it's kind of like a lie of the enemy to say, well, just give it a try. And if it's good, you guys could always get married later. But there's a couple of things at play here. One is that when in national surveys, those who do live together before marriage, if they do end up getting married, right? Because that's kind of the idea is like, hey, let's try to live together first, and then maybe we'll get married. When they do that, it boosts the divorce risk by 15%. that they'll be more likely to divorce. A lot of that comes to, I believe, from a consumer mindset that I'm in this relationship as long as it's good for me. And when it's not good for me, then I'll stop. Then it will be over. And that's kind of the basis of why would we stay together. Where in marriage, hopefully your idea is not, well, this is only good for me and I'm out when it's not good for me, but this is, no, I'm going to vow to make a commitment to you that we will, if we take our vow seriously, that I will be with you through better or worse, through sickness and health, through richer and poor. I commit to you. And when things get a little hard, I'm not going to bail. I'm just going to get better tools and learn how to deal with this and how to overcome these things together. So there's a very different mindset of I'm going to get married and that's a commitment I make to you versus, hey, let's just live together. And if it doesn't work out, that's okay. We should just go our separate ways. It's almost like you're predetermining that, at some point this is going to fail. So let's just kind of do it this way. So I think that is something important to think about, to talk about, and especially if children are in the mix, that marriage is really a better situation for them. It's also a wealth booster. I saw an article at the Wall Street Journal a while ago talking about how similar couples, like let's say they got married at 23 or started living together at 23, that as you track them as they get older, the married couples are much wealthier. And a lot of that comes from they pool their assets. They put stuff together. They put a down payment on a house. They start to build their assets. Where a cohabiting couple will more divide their assets. That's yours, that's mine, don't spend that. And they spend their time kind of saying, you pay for the lettuce and I'll pay for the electricity bill. And the time is spent that way and the assets are never pooled. And they don't accumulate wealth nearly at the same rate as a married couple. So I thought that was also very interesting.
Our guest today is Arlene Pellicane, author and speaker. Her books include 31 Days to a Happy Husband, What a Man Needs from His Wife. It's one thing to talk about society in general and the statistics about marriage. It's disturbing if those statistics are too close when it comes to the church. Are we seeing that there are some better signs in the church than those outside the church as far as marriage?
Yes, and I think we can be really heartened by that. My friend Shanti Felton has done a lot of research on that. And, we hear the marriage statistics and we think, oh, no, that's terrible. And then we'll hear, oh, it's the same in the church. We think, oh, that's terrible. But when the researchers look at it better, they will say that if people regularly attend church, so not just saying, oh, I believe in God or I believe in a Christian mindset, whatever, but they actually attend worship services, they're active in their faith, then that number will dramatically decrease. So the church is doing much better with marriage than the people without a genuine faith, active faith in Christ. So that is encouraging news. That's encouraging news for sure. They also found that if young people, because they were saying, the research was showing that if they're very young, like 20, 21, 22, et cetera, that it was like, oh, maybe you should wait till you're more your late 20s, mid to late 20s. But they found that if they were young, but they were religious, that they would do just fine versus if they waited to be older but weren't religious. So the religion seems to have a good component to help people, and the reasoning would follow because they do have that mindset of commitment. They do have a community that supports marriage and that says marriage is a good thing. It's a good thing from God, and that marriage is the best way to raise children. So they're surrounded in that kind of community, so they're more likely to experience that success, which is good news.
It is. And before we run out of time, we've talked just a little bit about National Marriage Week. Now, that runs until Valentine's Day. Is that correct?
That's right. It's an easy week to remember because it's always the week leading up to Valentine's Day. So it's February 7th through 14th. And it's really just like you would see, an anti-smoking campaign or something like that, hey, this is a marriage campaign to say marriage is good for us. Let's talk about the benefits of marriage. Let's help people embrace that in our society. And marriageweek.org is a very simple website that people can go to, and they can find activities that they can do. They can find a couples connection plan that can help you connect better this Valentine's Day. You can find a national calendar, which will show marriage events throughout the United States at different times of the year that you may want to attend. So it's really a fantastic resource.
Well, if you're looking for financial stability, better health, greater happiness, healthier kids, marriage is the thing to look for, right?
It certainly is. It's kind of the unsung hero. Yeah.
All right. Well, our guest has been Arlene Pellicane, author and speaker. And again, how can people find out more? What's the website and any other information to find out more about National Marriage Week or about some of the resources that you have for marriages?
Yeah, it's marriageweek.org, marriageweek.org, and I encourage you look for that couple connection plan. It's a really great resource.
Arlene Pellicane, thank you very much for joining us today at Weekend Connection. A pleasure to talk to you.
Thank you so much.
My name is Mike Dyes. Join us again next week for Weekend Connection.
Thank you for listening to this feature, a production of BBN, the Bible Broadcasting Network. BBN provides 24-hour Christian programming, great Christian music, and Bible teaching. Listen to BBN by clicking the link in the description.